Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's video is a re-upload of an interview that I originally posted in June of 2019 with Sally, who remained anonymous, and her story of her daughter identifying out of the blue as trans due to her exposure to internet online communities, and then the struggles that that family went through. This was the first interview of its kind that I was able to produce, and recently I was kind of flagged by YouTube, and it seemed like they were going through my old content to find reasons to kick me off the platform, and I proactively started to delete some of the content that I felt would be dicier, and this is one of the ones that I chose, and then I stopped doing that, and I feel bad now for having deleted this because this is an important part of the cultural narrative right now about how trans identification is impacting familial relationships. I can say that since this interview that was filmed again in 2019, that things have changed for Sally and her family. Her daughter has begun to communicate with her more, and they're on good terms. I hope to have them both on at some point in the future, but for the time being, I will let this episode stand as it is. Without further ado, here is Sally.
So my daughter had no issue with being a girl all her life. We were a very active Girl Scout troop, and very liberal parents, open-minded, not very strict, never really needed to be. And when she was about 12, I think it was, she got onto DeviantArt.com, which I had no idea had any kind of bad juju going on. She's very artistic and writes a lot, very driven that way, and so she was talking about art and putting her art on there, and that's really all I thought there was to it. She did start spending too much time online in general, and so we had to kind of try and pull her back from that just to still have time for school, and she started becoming hostile about that, about the restrictions of time online. And when she was about 14, she moved over to Tumblr, and again, I was utterly clueless as what the main topic of discussion was on there. I really had no idea, and at the time, but again, spending way too much time online in general, and again, trying to get her to not spend so much time online. And she met a kid on there, a girl, who's several years younger than her, and they became quite good friends, and that young lady lived nearby. And originally, when I first met that girl, I literally thought she was a boy. She was carrying it off so well, and was introduced as male. And my son, bless his heart, knew from the beginning that she was a girl. I guess children can recognize that better, but I kept having to correct him on the pronouns whenever this girl was over, because at the time she was going by he, and he kept saying, my son kept saying she, and I was like, no, he. And then it dawned on me as this girl started developing physically. I realized, oh, well, there's a girl, but for whatever reason, she's identified as male. And, we were always the cool parents, and although I didn't really like the kid very much, it wasn't because she identified as trans. I just didn't like her, but that's a side note. But, we didn't want to be too restrictive, and there was nothing like, at the time, I didn't think there was nothing bad about the girl. I just didn't like her personality. And as she started developing, and she started actually presenting more feminine, she would wear dresses and stuff, and then she went over to the they and them. And then I think my daughter was about 16 and a half, and all of a sudden there was a note on the bathroom counter: please use the male pronouns to address me. It makes me more comfortable. And this was utterly like a bomb falling out of the sky. Completely, I had no idea that was coming, because she was still dressing like her usual self. She was wearing makeup, letting me pluck her eyebrows. We were doing our nails together. Just okay. And now I'm supposed to call you he and him. And her brother has language challenges. He's got some learning disabilities, and so he was having troubles with just general language as it was. And I'm like, now we're supposed to tell your little brother that he's supposed to call you he and him. And so I just ignored the note because I was so angry that she couldn't just sit down and talk to us, because we had always been a very open, have dinners together, talk about stuff, and it's like, why can't we have a conversation about this? So I just ignored it because I was upset. Better or worse, that's what I did. And how did it go from there? Then she sent me a text, however much longer afterwards, I don't know, a month, 2 months. She sent me a text saying, I really need you to use the male pronoun. And I said, well, we need to talk about this, not have it be a text conversation. Let's actually sit down and have a conversation. So we tried to have that conversation with her, and she just became very defensive and kind of rattled off script-like responses that didn't apply. Like, well, you guys need to treat me like an adult. It's like, yeah, we do treat you like an adult. Where did that come from? And she just couldn't articulate a reason why we were supposed to think of her as male. She really couldn't articulate a reason. We were just supposed to do it. So we still kind of we just started avoiding pronouns. We just avoided them. And she wanted to go by her middle name, which was fine. We switched over to her middle name. And then things just kind of kept going downhill with school, and her life was just online. Not sleeping at regular hours, not eating, not changing clothes, not showering. It just got bad. So started taking her to counselors to get a depression addressed, and she never liked the counselors. We were like, try this counselor. No, don't like that one. Try this one. Don't like that one. And then one of the counselors told me, oh, she said she wants to cross-dress. And I was like, she can wear whatever she wants. Why cross-dress? What do you mean? Like, she's totally free to wear whatever clothes she wants to wear. We've never pushed her to. She always liked the dresses and skirts. So she got a binder, chest binder, and then she would do that once a month. So like maybe once a week she would do the kind of masculinize her outfit and present.
Did you know about the binder?
Yes, I did. And at the time,
were you aware of the possible health complications with that?
Not at the time. I mean, I didn't like the idea, but no, I had no idea how damaging they could be after, time and time again wearing them. Had I known, I would have sat down and had a heart-to-heart with her, but I didn't know. And I'm trying to remember the timeline now. So, she didn't. So she didn't finish school. Her senior year was online, which, hindsight. But she said she wasn't going to do school at the brick and mortar for her senior year. So it was like, well, okay, we'll do the online academy, which of course she just didn't do her schoolwork. And so when we found out she basically failed her senior year, my husband told her, okay, no laptop, no Nook e-reader, no Game Boy. You just get your cell phone because you lied to us and you failed. Now you have to do another year of school. And you were dishonest with us. So that was the consequence. So that night when she got that consequence, she went on to whatever chat group she was in at the time and said that her parents took all of her stuff away. And she said, I don't know if she did or not, but she told them that she took a bunch of Tylenol and she was cutting on her thighs. I did see the scratch marks when we went to the hospital. And thankfully, one of those, I was at work and my husband was, clueless what was going on. Thankfully, one of those kids in that chat group actually called the police, and they showed up at our house. And so I went to the hospital with her, and they asked her, what provoked all of this. And I thought she was going to say, my parents took all my stuff away, but that wasn't her. Or I'm sorry, flip that around. I thought she was going to say, because I'm a boy stuck in a girl's body and nobody's understanding me. But instead, what she said was, my parents took all my computer stuff away from me, and there's a sexual assault. And again, I was like, whoa, wait, what sexual assault? And so after the doctor left the room, I said, what sexual assault are you talking about? Why didn't you tell us? And she said that one day in school, her then boyfriend, fairly casual relationship, grabbed her crotch while they were sitting in class. That was it. Now, I'm not minimizing. That's totally not okay. But the way she was elaborating it to the doctor was like some, full-on sexual assault or something, Mm-hmm. So she told me that was the incident. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, that's bad, but I think you gave the doctor a bit of a different impression. Yeah, so, and again, in my head, I'm thinking, well, okay, so where does the transgender thing come in? Isn't that why you did all this? I don't understand. So, parents in the situation, no training, no heads up on how to deal with this. So we were like, well, shit, if she's going to be suicidal, we'll just switch over to the pronoun, and just because we don't want her to kill herself, obviously. So we did the whole switch over. And
how old is she when she did the Tylenol?
I think she was 17 and a half. Yeah. 17 and a half. And so then she wanted to go to an alternative high school for her 5th year of high school. So we got her signed up. And that didn't even work. She still just refused to do the work that was needed. And she's a smart girl. This has nothing to do with like reading problems, or she's been reading since she was 4.5 years old. She just was tunnel vision into this transgender thing. That's all there was to her life. And so she didn't finish again, but halfway through that year, the family where this other girl lives, they took her in and are completely affirming. Both of their children are switching sexes to the other side, and they're just all gung-ho to support whatever these kids want to do. And she's been living with them now for, it'll be, 4 years. It'll be 4 years. Yeah, it's 4.5 years. Yeah.
And what's the state of your contact with her?
We had contact with my daughter right up through April of this year. And I honestly don't know what the triggering thing was for her to just cut us off, because she got testosterone from Planned Parenthood. I used to support them. Now I can't support them anymore, but they gave her testosterone in December, and we sat her down and we said, we're really concerned. We still don't understand why you think you're a boy. And we're really worried about what this is going to do to your body and your mental state. And instead of having a conversation with us, she just got pissed off and walked off. And I was like, once again, if you can't even convince us that you're a boy, how the hell did you convince a medical practitioner? It's like, if you've convinced them, why don't you give us the same demonstration, whatever that is? And keep in mind, she's been dressing like a typical girl right up until less than a year ago. So whatever.
And romantic partnerships? Does she date?
Well, she doesn't talk to us about that stuff. So I don't know what kind of relationships she's got. She's had some online relationships, but in person, actual, I don't know. I have no idea. And so she kind of stopped talking to us for a couple weeks, and I thought, well, shit, maybe we should have just not said anything. But I can't not say anything when I'm seeing my kid literally kill themselves. It's going to be slow, but it's a slow process of killing herself. And so she came over a few more times after that, and I thought, okay, we'll just not talk about it. At least we gave our 2 cents, and we'll just let it be. She's an adult. She can do what she wants. And so I thought everything was going to be okay. And she'd been using a name for like 3 years, a boy first name and a girl middle name. Very interesting. And so she'd been talking about wanting to get her name changed. And I knew she had mentioned something about going up to apply for a job, and I asked her brother, I said, hey, text her and ask her if she got that job. And she came back and said, well, I've got some paperwork I need to do first. And I thought, oh, that's the name change. She's finally going to do it. So turns out on May 6th, she actually changed her name to something entirely different. And this is like the fifth name change, not legal name change, but the fifth name change she's cycled through in the last 4.5 years. This time it's official. She's legally changed her name to a name that she's never once mentioned to us. I've never seen her use it on social media. So I knew when I saw that, I was like, oh, she's not going to talk to us anymore. That's her way of completely cutting off. But she kept her last name. So at least I was somewhat comforted in that she at least kept her family name. But she completely changed her name, and she has not responded to a single text or phone call since. So that's where we are.
Did she have any, is there any comorbidity or any learning disabilities, or is she on slightly autistic or on some sort of spectrum or anything like that that you guys have been able to ascertain?
She's never been diagnosed or anything with any learning disabilities or ADHD or autism or anything like that. When I was taking her to the counselor to get some depression addressed, she said, and I wasn't in that appointment, so it was just her, I was just hearing it from her side. She said that the doctor had suspected maybe, was it autism or ADHD? I can't remember now, but I thought, well, that's weird because, you're 17. We're just now getting, I don't know. I thought that was odd because I had never seen anything that would have struck me as, she didn't like math. She never liked math, but she was always very, very good with reading and writing and drawing and socializing. And yeah, so I was like, I don't know.
How has her artistic output been? And the reason I'm asking that is that when she was disengaging from school, what was she engaging in? Or did she just detach from any sort of productivity?
She was still doing the artsy stuff, a lot of sketching, a lot of character making for like manga kind of character stuff, and writing a lot. Very disorganized about it, though. I mean, she's got notebook after notebook of stories that are started and nothing's congealed into a complete story.
And what about her social life aside this family and online? Did she go out to parties? Did she have girlfriends or stuff like that?
She did a little bit up through her sophomore, junior year of high school, but then it just really became the screen and that one kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you reached out to groups of other parents in this situation?
Oh, yeah.
And have you found anything that's given you insight or, I guess, helped to understand more what your daughter potentially might be going through, or at least understand better what you're going through and how to deal with that?
It's helped me to not blame myself so much, because now I realize, oh my God, it's happening to so many people. And I look at these other parents and I'm like, they didn't do anything wrong. This is just a fucked up societal situation that affected their kid. And because I'm very vulnerable to taking on responsibility for everything. So I'm like, okay, somewhere along the line I fucked up and we didn't do this to prevent it, or we didn't do that, or and I'm like, whoa, time out. I've been to a counselor. She's like, your daughter is her own agent, and she might be going down a really bad path, but it's not because of anything you did or didn't do. These are choices she's made, and even though they're terrible and it's hard to live with, you just have to live with it. And I was okay with that. What I'm not okay with is her not communicating with us. That's, yeah. So.
You say when she was 12, this came out of nowhere. In looking back, do you see any... Oh, 16.
She was 16.
Okay.
There was
12 is when she started getting into the internet.
When she started getting addicted to being on the internet, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how old is she now? Just to peg her kind of her
She'll
generation.
be 23.
Okay.
On her next birthday.
Okay. So her entire, basically, pubescent life has been connected to the internet. Mm-hmm. And after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And have you seen this same kind of pattern pop up in other parents? Same kind of out of nowhereness and connected to the internet?
Yep. I mean, there's even people who detransitioned who've written about it, that they said, if they had just been pulled off of Tumblr sooner, that they may not have gone down that road in the first place. Yeah.
Is there any parallel for when you were that age, when you hit puberty and
Well, there
entered
wasn't
into
the
that
internet.
questioning? Well, there wasn't the
Wasn't
internet.
the internet.
Yeah.
So, and I'll be very blunt with you. I was molested. I had periods that were fucking god awful. If there was any reason that I would have wanted to be in another body, I certainly had all those reasons. And had I been sucked into the internet, I could have very potentially been brainwashed into thinking, oh, if I just start testosterone and be a man, I can get rid of these problems. At 15, that could have very easily happened to me.
Did your daughter express gender dysphoria, that she didn't like
Nope.
her femininity,
Nope.
or is just another layer of wanting to engage with the world? Or how do you understand, if there wasn't gender dysphoria, what do you think was the motivating factor?
Well, there's probably body dysmorphia. I think it's so she inherited the horrible periods. I can totally sympathize with her. So she's got that. And I think she's got depression. And so I think she thinks, because of what she's been told by these people that she's never met and never going to meet, that, the depression and the god-awful periods, that you would just be better off being a man. You would be happy, and you won't have to deal with the pain, and you won't have to deal with being treated, having any kind of sexism towards you. Yeah.
And as your son, just to get kind of a sample of the home life, was your son as invested into the internet as your daughter?
Oh, he's much younger. So no, he's very addicted to YouTube and watching people open the new.
Games.
Well, he's into video games, but he's into Legos and
unpackaging.
So he likes to see people open packages of new toys, because then he's like, oh, I need that one. I want that one. Yeah. So which, I don't want him doing that all day, but at least he's not getting, fed ideas that he doesn't need. So, yeah.
And have you seen or heard of parents whose daughters have started to go down this trajectory, that they were able to interrupt that or intervene in that? And are there any supplementary entertainment or media content that you've noticed might ameliorate that obsession with the gender ideology?
Well, one parent I'm in touch with, her daughter had some eating disorders and stuff to go along with, and the gender dysphoria hit a little earlier with her daughter. I think she was like 12 or 13 when it started. And they were able, to do this, they were able to put her in a residential treatment center to address the other stuff, not to address they don't want the counselors there, and the counselors are totally happy with this, to use the male pronouns, use the proper pronouns, don't even go there with the gender stuff, but they are addressing the eating disorders and the depression, and working on family communication. They have a weekly, we all talk as a family kind of thing. And she said that was helping to dissuade her from going down the I'm a boy thing. She said she kind of switched over to, I'm just non-binary, which was like a middle ground kind of thing. But another girl recently came to the center who is absolutely, I'm a boy, use the male pronoun, and now my friend's daughter has now switched back to, me too. So they're feeling really devastated, because they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and it may not have worked.
Sounds like a social contagion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And do you feel that you and your daughter were close before or during this whole thing? And could you describe like the quality of closeness?
Well, we would have Mother-Daughter Day. We would, we like to plan out Girl Scout troop meetings together and figure out and work on badges, earning badges together, and just had a lot of the same, political views and just yeah, there was just a lot of stuff we had in common. And she always would tell people what an awesome mom she had. She loved my cooking. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that she does, and I see, and I'm like, oh, that's me, because she likes to cook, and I'm like, oh, she got that from me. And she loves notebooks and paper products, and she got that from me. And it's kind of neat to see that. Yeah, at once it's like we're just not allowed to have a different opinion about the transgender ideology at all. We're just not even allowed to have an opinion. We're just, yeah. So.
And were you able to ascertain what it was about being male or being perceived as male that was so desirous for her, or that she wanted?
My mother tried asking her one time, like, why do you want to be a male? And she can't really answer the questions. It's all just part of being part of this group. And, I was talking to someone else whose kid has not done this, but she said, maybe it's their kind of like, fuck you to the world or fuck you to the man kind of thing. Okay, but they're the ones that are going to end up getting hurt. That's the problem. I mean, there's, back in the 60s, the rebellion was drugs. And then, in the 70s, it was being gay. And 80s was getting a tattoo. Those are things that are, okay, yeah, they're rebellious, but they don't really ruin you. But, my daughter's voice has been permanently altered. It will never be the same, even when she detransitions.
Yeah.
If she does. But this whole transition, I don't even subscribe to that anymore. No amount of testosterone, mastectomy. She's not going to transition into a male. She's never going to get a Y chromosome. No matter what she does, she will never have a Y chromosome. Mm-hmm. She'll just be a girl who's had all these horrible things done to her.
Altered, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, thinking about other parents who are seeking out this material and stumble upon it, what kind of advice do you have in weathering the situation? Or are there groups that are able to be accessed by parents? I'm sure that to a certain extent, parents might need or feel the need to be private about these things because it can get them in trouble if the leaks happen or something.
Right. So the Kelsey Coalition is great. Fourth Wave Now is great. There's another one, Transgender Trend, I believe it's called, .com. Yeah. Peak Resilience. Those are places you can go to like with, I think it was the Fourth Wave Now. I can't remember. It was either Fourth Wave Now or Kelsey Coalition that connected me with an in-person support group that I meet with once a month. As far as like how to prevent, just totally communicate with your kids, talk about this. I mean, literally talk about it. I talk about it with my son. I explain to him that this is what's going on, that it doesn't mean we hate people that are doing this. They're confused. And there's this, that ideas can spread like germs. And because one day he was sitting at the table with me and he said, I don't want my sister to be a boy. And I said, she's not. No amount of, nothing she does to herself is going to make her a boy. I said, she's got some mental, emotional things going on right now, and we just have to kind of ride it. Yeah.
It's very difficult to argue this because there's such a strong push from almost every media outlet at this point has subscribed to this and is pushing this full throttle, from the Washington school systems up to the mainstream media. So it's everywhere. But why? What are your thoughts on why a girl is a girl and a boy is a boy, or a woman is an adult human female? Like, can you describe like why you think that is truth or that is reality?
Simple biology. I mean, literally simple biology. I don't care if a guy wants to wear a dress and pink nail polish, go for it. I'm totally cool with that. Heck, even if he wants to go by a female name, I'm cool with that too. It's the medical, actual, physical, irreversible things that are being done to people that I just can't subscribe to, because I've read too many horribly sad, depressing stories of men and women who've had parts cut off. You don't get those parts back, and they regret it, and they're just like, well, screw it, I'm just stuck like this. It's like, if the doctors couldn't figure out with that individual that having his penis cut off, he was going to regret it 10 years later, then how do we know which ones aren't going to regret having their breasts cut off and which ones aren't going to. How do we know? If they couldn't figure it out with those people, how are they figuring it out now?
And you said that your daughter never took to any counselors or didn't find a counselor. Do you think that if she would have found a gender-affirming counselor, she would have stayed with that?
I think she did find a gender-affirming counselor. She's been with one because I took her to several different counselors, and she never liked any of them. And once she left the house and moved in with the other family, they found her one that, of course, was absolutely gender-affirming. So, yep.
Okay. And do you have any indication that this family is, this might be the wrong question or too speculative, but do you feel that this family has had a say in your daughter's trajectory?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember.
And have you been able to speak with them about this, adults to adults?
We're on. Trying to talk to them when I did several years ago was utterly useless and a waste of my time because in their minds, we are just the horrible, awful parents. It's not going to matter what we say. Even though at the time they only knew my daughter for 2 years, apparently the 18 years that I knew her just didn't count for anything. Yeah. So it's kind of like trying to talk to a cult leader and say, hey, maybe your ideas aren't so great. You can't tell a delusional person they're delusional. It just doesn't, you can't.
It's just odd that, statistically speaking, to have 2 transgender children is
pretty unlikely.
Pretty unlikely.
Yes, and their older one didn't even decide to switch over until he was 22. And I met him. There was nothing about him that made me think he was a girl before that. So.
And it seems, what is it about? I wonder what that can tell us about what it is, this form of transgenderism. I've done a lot of interviews. I don't know if you've seen them, but I've interviewed a milieu of people, from researchers to trans people to detrans people, and there is a small subset of people for whom transition is very good for them, but there comes with a lot of caveats and a lot of time spent thinking about this. But what you're describing with this family, and this is kind of icy ground, but it seems like, what is it about just becoming the other gender? It's some sort of cultural activity or some sort of, it's about transition. It's not about becoming in line with who you are. It's more about entering into this transition itself is what's celebrated. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's literally when this started happening, I was telling some of my friends about it, and they're like, yeah, it's like a fad. And I said, yeah, it is. It's a fad. You're in the cool group if you're trans and you're converting to the opposite sex. Like I said, it's just like those other things. You were cool if you were gay. You were cool if you got the tattoo. Now it is you're cool if you're trans. And yeah, I'm with you. I understand there's a teeny weeny percentage of people who, either have a different brain anatomy that doesn't coincide, or they actually do have a mismatch of chromosomes. They might have 2 X's and a Y, or there's all kinds of variations, but they're a small percentage, and I think those things can actually be physically measured. And if someone has those, then by all means, get them what they need to feel right. But all these kids who are just coming in and saying, I feel like a boy. Okay, here's your testosterone. That's a really weak reason to hand someone over drugs that are going to permanently change them.
And so far as you know, Planned Parenthood is passing out
informed
testosterone
consent.
like it's
informed consent is all they require.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, because my daughter's been on my insurance all along, and she was trying to get the testosterone, and 4 years into it, she wasn't getting it because they were like, yeah, probably not. Then she went to Planned Parenthood, boom, got it.
And so she was diagnosed, or she went to a medical professionals, and they denied her testosterone then through your insurance. they put her through some tests, psychological.
I have no idea. I mean, I know that I talked to them a lot, so they had some backstory. I explained, look, if you decide she's trans, that's between you and her. However, let me just give you some backstory so you have the full picture. So maybe that helped. I don't know.
And what, going forward, on a societal level, what do you think needs to, I guess you said speaking more openly with your children about this, but what do you think needs to be done in the public sphere?
We need to stop glorifying it, normalizing it, celebrating it. Because, I mean, I've even seen an article about written by a transgender identified transsexual. I prefer the term transsexual when it's a legitimate. There's either something different in the anatomy of the brain, or they have the mix of chromosomes that's not exactly male or female. I read an article about written by a transsexual person who said, please stop normalizing this, because for that person, I don't remember if it was a he or she, but for that person, they were like, this was, for me, it was like a mental, or not, it was a medical condition, and I got it taken care of. I don't go around like, yay, I had this medical condition, and yet that seems to be how it's getting. And they said, stop doing that, because it's not something, it's like, if I have cancer, yeah, I'll be happy if I get over it, but I'm not going to be like, woohoo, I had cancer. We're not going to, so.
Yeah, that culture of celebration is kind of interesting. I've been thinking about that with regards to having a month-long celebration of sexuality for the month of June now. I don't know I'm not against pride, but like all of a sudden it's a month, but I think it's the corporations so they can virtue signal up the wazoo. But there's this twin prong effect of you can't just accept somebody, you have to celebrate them, and you can't be wary about anything, because any wariness, any caution is automatically phobia. So you're just in this double bind where you have to embrace and you can't question anything, which has a very profound effect when there is something going on with your daughter, or when pedophilia starts getting bandied about as something that we need to just celebrate, or starting to head in that direction, or pedophilia-like behavior starts becoming part of the celebration, which is interesting because, like you, I was fairly liberal until I was hit over the head with some very illiberal activity from the left. And so it's interesting. How do you feel about that? Not necessarily politically in the national politics sense, but how is your view on society and how the conversation's going with regards to acceptance and I guess caution being mixed together?
Oh, let's see. There was a lot in that question.
Sometimes I do that.
Let's see. So, I mean, as far as like human sexuality, I don't give a rat's ass as long as they're adults and they're consenting. I don't care. I couldn't care less if it's 3 guys and 2 women that want to get married. Go for it. I really don't care. But the whole T getting pulled into that, I'm really getting frustrated, because I want them to be separated. Like, can the rainbow just be LGB period, and the T, they can have their own, because they're getting intertwined, and now people are mixing up sexuality with physical sex, biological sex, and I wish we would just throw the word gender out the window, because objects are gendered, people are not. They have a sex. Except for the small percentage of people who have that, different mix of chromosomes. But, I'm sick and tired of the term transgender. I'm sick and tired of these gender reveal parties. It's like, no, you're not revealing the gender of your child, because your child's going to express themselves however they want. You're revealing their sex. There's nothing wrong with the word sex. It's a biological term. So with regard to the trans stuff, I've become far less vocal about support of it, and much more vocal about, whoa, time out. Can we, like, as a world, as a society, just say, time out? What are we doing? Because now we have these little kids who are getting put on hormone blockers, and I think the pendulum was way over here, and the transsexual people weren't getting the help they needed. Okay, great, let's get them the help they need. But then it just went all the way, and yeah.
Very rapidly.
Yes.
And so what year was it that your daughter started moving in this direction then? 2015 or something?
2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
That really coincides for whatever reason. I haven't figured out, like, what was it? Why did it happen just
What
then?
happened that year, right? Yeah.
Maybe it was just, it would already been seeded, because I do think that the internet had a very large influence on the ROGD
Yes.
kids.
Yes.
So who knows? But
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you think that we should cover for people? Or is there any way you think that through the resources that we've outlined now, through Fourth Wave Now, Peak Resilience, and the Kelsey Coalition, is there any other groups that you think that people could find? Or do you think that those resources will filter them into?
I think they'll filter them into a lot of other stuff. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I really want people to be more comfortable talking about it. Because if people feel like they're shut down and they're not even allowed to have the slightest bit of a dissenting agreement, then the one agreement's going to get all the weight and the say, and all of us that are like, wait a minute, can we like discuss this for a second? And yeah, I want people to be more comfortable talking about it.
Do you feel comfortable talking about it online then? Or just do you feel like you have to be very careful? I mean, aside that we're taking your identity out of this.
Right. I do feel more and more comfortable. I work for a public agency. I won't say where, but so I kind of have to be careful because they're all pro support and everything. And again, I'm not trying to suggest that people need to be mistreated or anything like that. I don't, I work in a field where I was exposed to people that were having delusions of all kinds, and you still treat them like a human being and get them what they need. But that doesn't mean you affirm the delusion that there's stuff in the water that's causing aliens to fall out of the sky. You still don't, you just listen to them. So I have become more comfortable kind of sharing it with certain colleagues so that they're aware. So I'm trying to get the seed out there. Like every time I share it with one more person, it's like, okay, I planted another seed. And what's interesting is every time I talk to someone new, I kid you not, oh, I have a friend whose daughter is doing the same thing. Oh, everything. I'm like, oh my God, it's worse than I thought. I mean, it's like, I can't tell anyone without hearing about, they know someone else who's doing it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It might be that we're in Washington and it's just cutting edge out here with the next great thing. But
good point. Yeah.
But it won't stop here. And okay, so your tact is basically one-on-one communication. And I think that's really important too. I think we are way too online, even though that's my entire livelihood is doing this stuff online. But I think that it's important for us not to undervalue face-to-face conversation. Yep.
So I just try to plant the seed wherever and whenever I can. And of course, I have to be very cautious about it because I'm like, don't assume I'm a transphobe. I'm about to tell you something. Yeah. Yep.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Yep.
Have fun with your scraps.
Yep. I will. All right. Thanks.
I wish you the best too, and I hope that things resolve with you and your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. I do too. All right.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.